Hello, my lovely listeners. This is Angela Noel, and welcome to another episode of the Reclaim Your Fire podcast. And this is episode 116. And in this episode, I answer a question that I have been frequently receiving. And that is, what caused you to move to Sedona, Arizona? So I go into that a little bit. I go into a little storytelling about the first time I ever saw the American Southwest. And also, I just got into flow the second half or so, or the last 10 minutes. And of course, there's always what I think are valuable lessons for you for being in your personal power and for you living your most authentic, blissful life. So, stay tuned. Hello, fire goddesses. Welcome to the Reclaim Your Fire podcast. My name is Angela Noel, and I am a prosperity coach for the newly awakened or awake curious, driven overachiever, and overdoer. After running a successful acupuncture practice in Boston for 12 years, I decided to hang my hat by closing the practice and pursue what it is that I'm really meant to do in this world, and that is to serve humanity online on a global scale. Using my background in Chinese medicine, along with the brain science of habits, spirituality, and divine masculine and feminine energy balance, I am here to help you not just understand, but know how powerful you are and that you are the person who is responsible for having the finances, inner peace, radiant health, and energy, aka the fire, in your life that you've always desired. My intention with this podcast is to serve humanity, no matter what gender you identify as, to help bring out the divine feminine goddess in each and every one of you. As you probably are already aware, the world is changing and is begging for the goddess to come out in each and every one of you. So, fire goddesses, stay tuned. Hello, how are you? It's Angela Noel, and today I have a more personal share on this episode. And as you know, as I've mentioned before, that when I share stories about my personal life, it's always an invitation for you to dig deeper into your inner self and your higher self. And I want to just dive in because one of the questions that I've been asked repeatedly lately, and I love this question, so I don't say repeatedly with any kind of irritation, but it's the realization that I've been asked this question so many times that maybe I need to record a podcast about this. And the question is, what made you move to Sedona, Arizona? So I thought I'd record an episode about this to share my journey and what caused me to make this journey across the country. What caused me to move from Boston to Sedona, Arizona. What caused me to leave the Northeast, where I'm from. I'm originally from the Hudson Valley, New York. And what caused me to leave it all behind and move to a different state over 2,000 miles away. I sold my house. I let go of a lot of my belongings, and I'm still letting go of belongings, and start over with a new life. So I want to share this with you because I feel like everything I share, it will resonate with somebody, even if it's just one person. I have done my mission in helping somebody in sharing through my story. So let's dive in. So I'll start off by sharing that I have probably always had a connection to the American Southwest, even before I fully realized it, because when I first saw the American Southwest, it was when I was in my early 20s. I was in college and I was traveling across the country in a 15-passenger van with 15 other individuals. So in other words, we were exceeding the limit of the van. We drove from Syracuse, New York to California, LA, and back in 9 days. And if you want to know more about that adventure, I did record an episode a long time ago, episode 52, called My Vagabond Life. And I'll link that in the show notes also, where I share more about this experience and of the different places that I've lived in my life. But it was one of those amazing experiences that I'll always remember, one that I know that I'll never, ever do again. And that is to be in a van cramped up with 15 other of my mostly best friends from college. And I think we stayed in a hotel for a total of 2 nights. And one night was unplanned because one of my friends had an epileptic seizure in the redwood forest in northern Cal. And we needed to just basically stop and not continue with the trip so that he could receive the medical care that he needed. But then, next day, once he was released from the hospital, we went on our merry way to make it to LA, where we stayed in another hotel. But that was an adventure. But my whole point in sharing that trip is it was during that trip where I was literally, I think, in the back seat of the back seat, or you know how in those longer vans, the back seat is basically like a rumble seat. It's just basically a 2-seater. It's not very comfortable. It's not very cushiony. And I ended up sitting in that seat for a majority of the trip because I think I was dating somebody at the time. And for some reason, we were always in that back seat. Not that there's anything to report, but you know what I'm saying, right? Because we were with 14 other people. But I remember waking up after traveling all night. Like the last thing I remember was being in Kansas and then waking up at like 5:45 in the morning because truly going on a trip like this, I was so exhausted that I learned that I could basically sleep anywhere, which was not always the case before this trip. And I woke up to the sights of the Rocky Mountains in Colorado. And I remember my friend who was driving the van at the time had this beautiful music playing because he was on the night shift, and it was, I don't know, some kind of spiritual, higher vibrational, probably binaural beats type music. And I felt totally in sync with nature. And it's a moment so simple that I will never, ever forget in my life. And from there, we went to different parts of the Rocky Mountains in Colorado. And then we headed down south where we spent time in the Grand Canyon and parts of Utah and New Mexico. And it was there that I just truly felt at home. Seeing the Grand Canyon for the first time is unlike any experience that I've ever had in my life, and it continues to allure me every time I go. And now I live 2 hours away from it. What a blessing. So I would say that the whole process started there, the process of moving here and the process of knowing that Sedona, Arizona is my soul home. And then there were other trips to Arizona after that. My mom and I went cross country. I had a job, and again, if you want to know more about these stories, I do share this in episode 52, so I don't want to rehash too much. But my mom and I decided to travel cross country together after I had a job in Northern California in the high desert called Tule Lake, California, where I had a job as I'm trying to remember what the position was, but it was a bird sanctuary. And I had a job opportunity there, which I quickly left when I realized my housing situation. Oh my God. It was a complete nightmare, but such a good experience, because what happened after that is, instead of my mom taking the train back east, she stayed with me on the trip, and we decided to extend our adventure and go home via the Southwest. And we got to stop in Arizona again on the way home. And again, I knew it was home. Like, I just felt it in my very being. And there were other trips to Arizona after that. And then I think starting almost 2 years ago, I started coming to Sedona specifically. And it was there that I knew that I needed to make the journey. And here I am. I made the journey, and I now live here. I'm a homeowner. I am a homeowner, and I'm in the process of remodeling my home, and I'm moving within the next 4 weeks. So the question is, though, what caused you? What caused me to move here and basically leave my family, who I'm very close with? And the answer is, besides just this knowing that it's home, Sedona is, if you haven't been here, is one of the most magical places that I've ever seen and felt in this lifetime. And it's one of those places, like, I thought the Grand Canyon felt like I was home, but it was still not quite my home because I hadn't yet been to Sedona. So after going and traveling to Sedona 6 or 7 or 8 times in the past 2 years, I decided, hey, every 2 months or so I'm flying out to Sedona. I need to find somebody to take care of my pets every time I go, and I know that I want to move there anyway, so I just decided one day to just put my house on the market and go. And along with that came a lot of learning, a lot of teachable moments, a lot of beautiful, turbulent waters, and more separation and more detachment from my old life. And I will share this with you, and that is that the actual process of getting into my little sports car and moving Ayla, my 60-pound rescue Sado from Puerto Rico, and Belle, my fluffy rag doll from New Jersey. Or she's a rag doll mix, but I'm pretty sure this cat is like mostly ragdoll. It was easy. The trip itself was easy. And it was when I landed in Sedona that more life lessons came, which are such a blessing. And I've learned to see these lessons, and one might also call these lessons hardships. But I've learned to be in the habit of recognizing when life gets difficult and hard that it's just an opportunity to advance into another layer of consciousness, into a higher version of myself, into letting go of past identities and limitations and lack, to be the light being that I am and the light being that you are. You also have that opportunity. So Sedona is my home. When I got here, it was met with about 6 weeks of dealing with identity theft and attempts to working with people who tried to steal money out of my bank account and closing all that down, which I look at that now and I'm like, I didn't really lose any money, but I lost quite a bit of time in trying to get all this settled. But now that I look back at it, it's so obvious that I needed to close those bank accounts. I mean, basically everything that was familiar to me is now gone, except my loved ones that I still have an amazing, expansive, beautiful relationship with. It's so beautiful to see my family and even a few of my friends grow and evolve. But other than that, bank accounts were shut down. Everything that was part of my old life is gone, right? And the homesickness that I experienced when I moved to Sedona was not expected. And it was not anything that I was prepared for. And trust me when I tell you, there were many times when my ego just said, Angela, let's just pack up the car and turn around and go back home. Go back and live in New York. Go back and live in Indiana. Indiana is where a lot of my relatives live. Go back and just go back to the familiar because it was super uncomfortable. And the reason why I stayed is it all goes back to this deeper knowing that goes beyond my 3D physical body and existence. That what Sedona is not just a place to live. Actually, one of my aunts reached out to me before I moved, and she was asking me about the move, and I think she asked me if it has to do with a man or something like that. Like, are you moving because of a relationship? Does this have to do with a relationship? And I said, no. Well, yes, actually, it does have to do with a relationship, but it has nothing to do with a man or anybody else except my relationship with myself. And within that is my dharma and living out my karma. So basically, moving to Sedona is part of a much bigger mission. It's not really about myself, and I'm reminded about that every single day of my life. It's not about me. Yes, it's beautiful. Yes, it's a blessing. Yes, in general, everything getting here, as far as manifestation, has been easy. But the stuff that's in the void, in the abyss, the lessons in between, that's part of the whole journey of living out my dharma, my life's purpose. And it's about raising my consciousness and elevating my light being so much that I can be a light and I can be a beacon of hope for other people. And I say this with complete humility, and it's about living authentically and, like I said earlier, living my dharma or my life's purpose. Many of you have reached out and said, well, what about your practice? Well, the acupuncture practice has been closed now for over 3 years, but even my coaching practice has changed and evolved, and I'm still changing and evolving that every day. Because with every part of myself that evolves. I see it as a new portal or a new window or a new opportunity to serve. So everything that has been familiar to me has this familiarity to it, but it looks totally different and it's beautiful. But that isn't to say that I didn't cry today, because sometimes I don't want to say that life gets hard, but to summarize it in language that everybody will understand is life can sometimes feel hard, but without that resistance, without the shadow, without the resistance of the ego, without my ego wanting to go and live out an older part of myself, there's going to be no expansion. So those lessons, I'm sharing this with you right now, are 150,000% necessary if you also desire a deeper level of knowing yourself and evolving and evolution. And some people are like, well, why do that if it's so hard, I mean, seriously, why do it if it's so hard? If you're met with lessons every day, which I am, it's because the bliss on the other side is well worth it. It's knowing that the level of expansion is infinite. So there's no limitation. And I'm sharing this with you because of this infinity, because our universe is infinite. So are we as individuals. So is our light. So by me sharing this with you, it is my intention that you will know this about yourself. And why does this matter? Like I said earlier, what's on the other side of all this, of all these lessons, is bliss, is joy, is higher frequency. It's the higher knowing. It's living in a frequency of love, which is how it's supposed to be, but it was taken away from us thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago. It's living a life basically of utopia, which is possible, free of disease, free of greed, and everything that's available for one is available to all. So I'm doing this work, not just for me, but for you and for all of us, with the intention that maybe there's something that I say today that will be resonant in you, so that you're inspired to learn how to trust yourself. Trust those urges when you're sensing that maybe your home is another place, whether it's your physical location or whether it's the home that is your heart's knowing. Am I making sense? So your heart's knowing, meaning, maybe there's a different home for your heart. Maybe there's a change you need to make and you've been sensing that yearning and you don't want to see it. But trust me when I say that on the other end, on the other side of this, what seems to be difficult is an opportunity for you to grow to infinity and be in your home. Live your authenticity. Live a life in the frequency of love, kindness, and reciprocity. I can't explain the level of gifts that I have received despite the lessons every single day. And I want to also mention, a couple of times I've mentioned that I want to do an episode on reciprocity, and I haven't done it yet because I think it hasn't been the right time. And I trust that when it's meant to be released, it will be released. But if you're sitting here listening and you're thinking, but how? How? First of all, I invite you to go back, starting with episode 107. Listen to episode 107, 108, 109, 110, and 100 and I've lost count. 113 or 114, the Healing Series interviews. And listen to specifically the interviews with my guests, because they share their stories of healing. Episode 111, my After Dark edition, is when I candidly and vulnerably and very uncomfortably share my experiences of healing from some of the things I went through in my life. So wherever you get the information, it's available to you. But if you're feeling the need to make some changes in your life, trust that. That is your intuition speaking. That is your higher knowing. And that is basically your soul communicating with you. And the soul is going to try to communicate with you until you finally listen. Spirit is going to communicate with you until you finally listen. So those intuitive nudges, those signs that you see in the universe through the sighting of birds or trees, butterflies, ants, snakes, mice, squirrels, conversations that you have with either a loved one or a person, a random stranger that you meet on the street, and something just hits you a certain way. That's spirit talking to you. It could be you wake up with a song in your head and it's playing over and over and over in your head. And you're like, oh, this is so annoying. I can't get this song out of my head. Well, go and listen to that song and listen to the lyrics. Maybe there's a message for you, or maybe there's a guitar riff or some kind of pattern in the music or something in the drumming that's going to bring you to a different level of frequency so that you can receive the messages. Because the signs are everywhere. The signs are everywhere. And I have known this for a very, very long time, but moving to Sedona, oh my goodness, that stuff gets turned way up as far as omens. So I'm going to wrap this up, but in conclusion, I moved to Sedona because I want to expand my spiritual consciousness. I have a teacher here, my guide, who is helping me with that. And I'm here because it's beautiful and because I was guided to come here. And it's as simple as that. Truly, it's as simple as that. So if you have any questions, reach out to me. I'm on Instagram at i.am.angela.noel. If this episode inspired you, you got a nugget or two out of it, I would love and be so grateful if you could leave a review of my podcast on Apple Music. Is that right? It's not iTunes anymore. Or Apple Podcasts. Or if you open up your app, if you have an iPhone, that's the best way. Open up my podcast, scroll down, see where it says write a review, and write a 5-star review there. I would be so grateful. And thank you for all of you who have been reviewing the podcast lately. I am so grateful for all of you out there who are my listeners. And it is my intention always to create podcast episodes that will help and inspire you into your next level, whatever that looks like for you. I'm here for you and I'm here for it. So until next time, remember to be radiant, be powerfully authentic, and know that you can reclaim your fire at any time. I love you so much. Mucho amor. Take care. Hi, this is Angela Noel, and thank you so much for listening to this podcast. If you have found value in listening to this podcast, I would be so grateful if you could kindly share this podcast with those you care about. Please help me spread the word of empowerment and possibility and expansion by sharing this podcast. Or you could also leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Remember to follow me on Instagram at I am Angela Noel, or you could go to my website at www.angelanoelinternational.com to learn more about my work and to find out how you can work with me. Thank you very much.